All right, I don't know what time it is on your clock, but I know what I'm getting ready for. It is time for the Professional CISO Podcast with David Malicoat.
Welcome, one and all, to the Professional CISO Podcast. I'm your host, David Malicoat. This show is an exploration of the topics necessary to transform the role of the CISO into that of a professional. All right, gang, today we have an interview with a security leader in the technology services space. Her roots are in IT services, which I know quite well, technology training, and cybersecurity leadership. Some notables on our guest today. She is widely known as the ballerina turned CISO. And she's also a proud mom, blended family of 4, with dual residence in Maryland and Texas. But before we get there, all right, I'm going to talk about a little bit of a reminder here. So we at the show are going to be involved in the 12th annual North Texas ISA Cybersecurity Conference. It's being held on September 6th. I believe that's a Friday, 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Come out. I think we're going to be in some sort of common areas, what it looks like, talking to folks, talking to a lot of the speakers. So could drop by, take a look and see what we're doing, and maybe I'll pull you in and get a little talk going on. So we'll see. So look for more information forthcoming. You're going to see. We put a link in the show notes, and then also I want to give everybody a reminder. So please like, follow, share. It's the best way that we can continue to give you this great content. Hit that follow button on Spotify and Apple. Hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Follow us on LinkedIn if you haven't seen us out there now, and then share us with a friend or colleague. I think getting it out there and helping spread the word helps us grow, but it also helps inform the community. All right, so now let's talk about being a professional CISO. In this episode, our guest is Jessica Nemmers, currently Field CISO at Flare Data Systems.
Yes.
You've held positions at Elevate, Commercial Metals Company, and Pro Systems / Dell Services, which is we'll get into in a second. Please welcome Jessica Nemmers.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
Awesome. Okay, so first, I know a lot of the story, but obviously our audience doesn't.
Yes. I've known him when he had hair, and we always say like 1990 something BC, which was before children.
So. Actually, it was during children.
During children, before my children, but yeah.
Yeah, I started early.
Yeah, you got ahead.
Because we'll talk about your interaction with my son, the 30-year-old.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
So, okay. Which was funny enough. They all remember going to each child going remembering trick or treating at Pro.
Oh, absolutely. And Mr. Pro's suit of armor.
Oh yes.
That's the boys just loved it.
Loved it.
Yep.
Okay. So let's get started. 1 to 2 minute, maybe a little bit more if we need to. You're in cybersecurity today. You didn't start there.
No.
By what we said earlier.
Yeah.
So talk me through kind of the early part. Where did Jessica kind of run into technology? How did you build that? What is the story arc to where you're at today?
Okay. So I was trained really since the age of 6, but really in earnest since about 12 to be a professional ballerina, which I was. I got to enjoy a 6-year professional career. It actually started my senior year of high school. I went to Ursuline, so shout out to the Bears here in Dallas. And company ended up going bankrupt unexpectedly, Ballet Dallas. And so I ended up at EDS working on an arts project. So it was EDS and Hitachi brought 100 days of Japanese art and culture to Dallas. So I was the chief operating officer's assistant. This was by happenstance that I ended up there. After that project was over, a friend of mine said, "You've got to go interview over at Pirouettes Systems. They're hiring anybody. They're trying to double their workforce." So I went over. They interviewed me and they said, "You want to start in recruiting?" I said, "Sure." So started in recruiting at a technology company. Still really didn't know what I was doing. And that's really just you worked at Pro Systems too. We had a lot of opportunity there, and they saw your capability. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't just your credentials, it wasn't just experience, it was capability. So I ended up running a global training organization, but also working partially with business development and as the docent in the data center. And I fell in love with the data center. So that was really my first walk into cybersecurity. but went on to Commercial Metals, still ran global training team over there. But then really after 20 years of being in infrastructure, being in IT training, I really was so interested in cybersecurity. So I started a security awareness program, and that's really how I stepped into ultimately the role that I'm in today.
Interesting that the cybersecurity awareness program came from the training side,
Yes.
right? And versus coming from the cybersecurity side. So you actually probably, I would willing to bet, had some better best practices relative to training and getting people realizing what's going on inside that training versus maybe what a cybersecurity professional would be able to do, not understanding how training works.
Yes, and it was funny because when I finally went into cybersecurity, I was like, yes, I can stop training. And I think it was like 2 days in, they're like, well, we need you to train these customers. I'm like, okay, great. And I spend a lot of time informally training, informing, or doing training awareness still for my customers and for community groups, things like that.
Love it. So I start with kind of the standard question, and the reason I don't want it to be like it's every time, but I think it means so many things to so many different people in our industry.
Yeah.
There's so many different answers. So do you believe in that idea that we must professionalize the role of the CISO? If so, what does it mean to you? I think that's where the variability comes in.
Yep.
Or if not, why?
Okay. Yes.
Okay.
Especially from my experience in the last almost decade in the CISO role, it is a business leader. So as a professional, it's no longer a technical job. And as I tell a lot of my customers, when you get hit with a cyber attack or a data breach, it is a company problem. It is not an IT problem. It's not a technology problem.
Right.
So I think looking at this role as a professional, and there are certain skills when we talk professionals like CIO, CFO, CMO, the C-suite, you're in the C-suite. So I think there are business skills that are needed now to be an effective CISO.
So one of the things that I've always kind of put forth and had with a lot of conversation I've had already with other professionals is we grew up as technicians or more technically bent, let's say, because that's what was expected.
Right.
And it seems like over the last few years, the demand on us has come to a place where it's more now we need those business skills. And you're either finding that some people have had it, or they saw that early and they did it, or you see some people maybe struggling a little bit.
Right.
What was your journey like relative to when did you start to realize that the business draw on you, that you needed to be more well-rounded, let's say,
Right.
And not just technical? And then, what did you do to be able to not just anticipate, but help develop your career in that path to be able to be that professional like you were seeking?
Okay, these are hard questions. So let's see. I have a business degree, so I have a BS in business. So that helped lay a foundation for just basic business acumen, financials, and really understanding. I think when I was still threat hunting and looking at the alerts and looking at endpoint detection and things like that, but then having to go and talk to the risk committee and talk to the board. That was what ultimately pushed me to say, I've got to tailor my message because I'm getting deer caught in headlights here. And I know what's important for our team. I know what's important for security operations. I know what's important for vulnerability management. The chief operating officer of this Fortune 500 company does not care about CVEs.
Right.
He cares about being protected and are we doing everything we need to do to stay out of the front pages of the Wall Street Journal. So that's really where, and it wasn't a smooth road always. I had a lot of bumps. I had a lot of frustration. I had a lot of pushback. But I think ultimately the aha moment was when one of our competitors was hit with a cyber attack. They were down for 3 weeks, and the chief operating officer and the CFO and the CEO in this boardroom, Fortune 500 company, said, if you need to take out one of our sites, meaning if you need to take the network down and isolate it, you have my permission. I'm relying on you. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm assuming that much risk for the company.
Right.
That was not a technology challenge. That was a risk management business decision that I would have to be a part of making.
It sounds like that was very impactful.
Yes.
What did you learn from it and take forward into the next pieces of your career?
Really, again, focusing on business acumen and translating what the purpose of cybersecurity is into risk.
It sounded like you became more of a student of the game.
I did. And I became more of a risk management professional. I'm a CISSP.
Right.
I still love the technology, but at that moment, it was almost like a fork in the road.
Watershed.
Yeah, and I had to choose. You can stay, more on that technical track, or which I really enjoyed, or you can really start to focus and hone in your business skills. I had a executive coach. She was amazing. Kind of helped me again elevate to the next level too.
So I'm going to tug on that thread.
Yeah. Yep.
Executive coach.
Yes.
CISOs out there looking, maybe seeing a horizon and going, where do I start? What do I do? How do I get myself from being this technical CISO more to, would you recommend, it sounds like, but would you recommend an executive coach?
Absolutely.
What are the resources? How did that come about for you? How would you get started if you were looking at that piece of things?
Yeah, so we were lucky enough at Commercial Metals to invest in a company, and we had two amazing coaches, and I was assigned one of them. And the CIO really had good insight to say, our leadership team needs to work better together. We're going to get executive coaches for the entire team. And it really elevated everyone. And it was the relationship building. It was the relationship and the interaction that we were focusing on. We had the technical part down. And that's really, again, another aha moment with me. Being a CISO, it's about the relationships. It's about the interactions with the other business leaders. It's not about your technical acumen. I mean, yes, you have to have it. But again, if you're coming with that forward, that's not going to bring a common understanding with the business.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love it. So kind of put a pin in this next piece, or this piece here. The future of the CISO role. Where do you see it going in your experience? What's the future hold for us?
I still think it's focused on risk. I mean, even NIST came out with 2.0 with the risk management framework within our framework that we've all known and loved. And I really do think it's continuing to be business focused, which is hard. So we have to have leaders that have a focus on business, a focus on the relationship, but then they still have that more traditional technical acumen or understanding. But I don't believe every CISO needs to come from a technical background.
Do you feel like at any given point that it seems to me, again, with a lot of conversations, that we're kind of throwing a lot under this umbrella of the CISO these days? Is there a point where you feel like maybe it gets to be too much and there's some sort of split that's going to happen? I've seen people advocate for a technical CISO versus a business CISO, those type of things. Anything on that front that you're thinking?
Yeah, I think it really depends on the complexity and size of the organization. I can see that. And there are BISOs, so there are business information security officers, there's the chief information security officer. I think for certain organizations that absolutely makes sense because it is getting a lot, and you cannot be in charge of everything.
Right.
And then then instead of the greatest of all time, we're the ones that get thrown under the bus.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Set up for failure.
Yeah.
Almost.
Oh yeah.
Totally agree.
So you want to be great.
You want to be effective.
You want to be the goat, but not the scapegoat.
Right.
I
can tell
wrote
you right
about
now,
that
one's
before.
going on social.
I wrote about that in one of my articles on LinkedIn. Yeah. And Scott
goat.
Schindler, I'm giving you a shout out because you're the one that helped me come up with that.
Be the goat, but not the scapegoat.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's going on social. I'm telling you right now. I've already got the
Perfect.
ready to go. Okay, so moving on a little bit.
Yes.
So when we prep for the show, I asked my guests to send me over a couple things that they're interested in that we can, that they're passionate about, because I want to see, and usually it aligns with what I'm thinking anyway, so which is really good. But this one kind of caught me because we were doing the pre-brief this morning, and I thought that Jessica meant that a given child,
Yeah.
like maybe hers, mine, just this, notional idea. But actually, this wound up being my actual child.
Your child.
And so I'll read it real quick.
Okay.
That way we get it specifically. Your child said, "I want to be a CISO someday, but others have told me you don't want to do that.
Right.
Why would anyone want to be a CISO with so much risk that has emerged with our position?" So funniness aside, that was actually my son that said that at Digital Fight Club the other day, which I had not heard about this conversation, which my children love to do that to me. I hear about stuff other places. But, okay, so talk to me about that conversation. Talk to me about what got that into your consciousness, and talk to me about what your thoughts are on it, for sure.
Okay. Yeah, we can't grow our next generation of CISOs if we're saying, you don't want this job. How are we going to bring in the next generation? And for some of us, we want to retire in the next few years, right? I want to get out of this. So it frustrates me when people are like, you don't want to do that. So we do need to continue to set the expectation with boards, with C-suites, on what is expected of the CISO. And again, that's where we're not the scapegoat. And we have so much risk on us. We're assuming risk for the company, but now we are at risk too. Right. So there's a lot of discussion about CISOs being included in the D&O insurance with the other executives and directors. We have to continue to set those expectations. I know as a CISO, one of my questions when I'm interviewing for a company is, what does the board support look like? Because if the board is not behind me, I'm not taking on that job. Right. So I think it's really looking at how you are looking at your CISO, how you're working with your CISO, and what you expect of your CISO. And then we can try to prepare this next generation to meet that expectation. But let's not scare them away, because we need them.
So I was recently at a teammate event, and one of the discussion areas was around a couple different things. One is some sort of organization, maybe a professional organization of some sort for CISOs, that would then align itself to maybe some self-insurance type situations, or the ability to allow us to, I don't want to say, have more influence as a group, right? Because I think right now, as we see, we're pretty well, always use the term, if you talk to 5 CISOs and ask their opinion, you're going to get 6 different answers, right? And so is there a way that we can align? I feel like what you're talking about, being able to bring up that next generation, would be a positive way to help get them on a path, right? Give them some, if we can organize into some sort of professional organization, allowing ourselves that ability to chart that path. What do you see? Does that seem like something that seems reasonable to you?
I do. I haven't really thought about it, but to me, it almost sounds like a CISO union. And I know, like, union, like, but that's why they exist. Something like that will, again, create standards, create protections. Even as a ballerina, we were part of a union, the same with symphony. Otherwise, as dancers, one of our union rules was 12 hours from curtain down to curtain back up. You cannot have people dancing 16 hours a day. You'll hurt them. So we had protections for us. There are some programs out there now that are starting to train up CISOs, like the EC Council. They have the Certified CISO program. I think it's fantastic. I love their curriculum. But again, I think what you're talking about from more of a professional organization would be the other side of it, and it's more the support and protection of versus the training up. And I think That's a great idea.
Yeah, and I also think that we have this ability as the leaders now, because it's very difficult to understand where you're at in a given period of time,
Yes.
right? I think I saw the other day that 1995 was the first CISO, right? And so we're talking just 30 years
Right.
compared to everyone else. We're young,
Yeah.
like as a profession, as
Yes.
a role. And I think, are we sitting in the middle of this defining period of what this is going to look like? And I think we, as at this point, the senior leaders,
Right.
have the ability to really chart what that looks like. And I think the choices that we make, and I'm not saying just you and I'm talking about everybody that listens, everybody that I talk to, all the CISOs that I know, or ones that used to be CISOs are now influence. We have that ability to chart that course.
Right.
Unfortunately, we just have a struggle in how best to do that, because we all have, again, 5 with 6, right?
Right.
Okay, so from a perspective of that middle leader, or anybody actually for that matter, because my son is not a middle leader at this point, he's still early in his career. If that's your path, what advice would you give them to say what should they be doing right now for that development side of things?
Right. Mentorship, definitely. So seeking the right mentor. And I've had many come to me and, hey, will you mentor me? And I say, I don't know you. So I think we've talked a lot about the different roles that you can seek. So I did executive coach. You can have an advisor. Hey, can I have a 30-minute, hour-long conversation? Can you give me advice on where to start, where to go, what books to read, things like that? And mentorship is someone who has a vested interest in you as a person and your success. And it's really a two-way street. But finding that mentorship is really important. And then, kind of charting out a plan. So if that is, it could be a certification for your next level of where you need to be. It could be executive training. It could be, an MBA type program, but not a full MBA. There are a lot of leaders, like SMU has leadership programs, but there are a lot of ways you can begin, again, to gain that business acumen as you're still coming up through the technology stack and the other disciplines within cybersecurity.
Love it. Okay, so we got 2 more topics we got to touch on real quick. So this one you said comes straight out of Digital Fight Club, which is government regulations,
Yes.
right? Bad rap around the word audit, compliance, things like that. So how do we communicate the why, right? How do we not make it such a bad word or bad term? But also, how do we balance it, right? Because if you say NIST, but like, have you ever done ISO or 800-53? Holy smokes, right? It would be overwhelming. So
It's a lot.
how do we balance that, and how do we sell that correctly?
Yeah. So I spend right now as a field CISO, so I'm a CISO to many versus a CISO to one. I spend all of my time really in more of a GRC type role because there are regulatory requirements driving cybersecurity. But that's good. So it's not cybersecurity coming up and saying, you've got to do this, you've got to do this. I'm warning you, it's going to happen. There's now requirements to say, you just got to do it. Because we've seen so much of it happening, like MFA. You have to have it, right? So I think it can help drive the purpose of cybersecurity. When people say it's too overbearing, regulatory requirements do not belong in our company, stay out of it, stay out of our business, I say Sarbanes-Oxley. And you and I were in corporate America during the Enron crisis. If SOX had not come along, how many more corporations would have cooked the books? I mean, really. It's transparency. And so with Prudential recently just updated their 8K with that type of requirement to be transparent and file, and you've moved from, we think 36,000, no, actually it's 2.5 million people were compromised. That is very powerful. So I think it's really driving a purpose of cybersecurity and not just getting into your business, and it's also protecting the consumers. Colonial Pipeline. If we are leaving critical infrastructure to do whatever they want, and they don't want to spend the money, on these security controls, then we've got people on the East Coast not being able to get gas in their car. Consumers are going to suffer from that.
So we've seen in the past the heavy hand of government
Right.
and how let's say the age maybe of legislators,
Right.
Or the slow wheels of the legislative process,
Right.
how it applies to how fast we do things or how fast the demands change on us,
Right.
versus also, do we have the ability to take this in our own hands similar to PCI? Because if you recall with PCI, they were going to get regulated.
Yeah.
And in turn, they was like, whoa, wait a minute, we'll handle this ourselves.
Yeah.
And they have been pretty good about being able to keep up with the demand of what that looks like. Is there an opportunity there when it comes to compliance?
I see it, and I see the scales kind of righting themselves. I think they feel heavy-handed and tipping over to try to catch people up. But I think as companies start understanding, I think there is a way to step into it without, we have to do every single control on this checklist. So really looking at what's appropriate for your company, and again, what is the most important? The purpose behind this.
Right.
Yeah.
So more about we need the outcome.
Yes.
But just don't tell me too prescriptively exactly what I need to do, right? Because then again, I think we've seen that with HIPAA. HIPAA has gotten relatively stale,
Right.
Because they really were prescriptive on a lot of things,
Right.
And I know there's a lot of people calling for HIPAA to be updated.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. So one last thing I want to touch, and I think we're right on time. I love it. So very clear, you've had a non-traditional path into cybersecurity.
Yes.
Right. If anything, you may be the poster child for that. I kid.
I'm the lowest common denominator. If she can do it,
No,
so can you.
no, absolutely not. I would say that's the. What I'm saying is,
Yeah.
of any story I've ever heard, certainly one of the most unique.
Yeah, that's why I love telling my I story. It's, if I can do it, so can you.
But I also don't want to diminish your expertise.
Well,
either.
thank you. I appreciate that.
Because I knew that from a long time ago. So when you're one of the people I relied on because I was a consultant
Yes.
somewhere else for many, many years. Then COVID came back and I'm like, I need to get pulled back into DFW.
Yes.
Jessica, can you help me? And you were like, absolutely. Okay, so non-traditional. What if you have some folks out there right now, whether outside looking in or just got inside, maybe you feel like they're struggling a little bit of fish out of water. What are some actionable pieces of advice that you've learned over the course of your career that you could help these folks with and be like, look, it may look bleak at times,
Yes.
but here's some words that you may be able that may help you.
Yes. There are opportunities. So I always advise someone, look at the job that you want, because cybersecurity is like being a doctor. So do you want to be a podiatrist? Do you want to be ear, nose, and throat? Do you want to be a brain surgeon? But there are disciplines within cybersecurity. So understand them, learn about them, align your passion and your capabilities to one of them. You don't have to be everything. You don't have to be a threat hunter and an analyst. There's areas. And then look at the skills, look at the job descriptions, look at what it takes to do that job. And then kind of focus your efforts that way. And then hopefully with the right mentorship, you can get there too.
Love it. Okay, so now we've come up to the best time.
Questions.
10 questions with Jessica Nemmers.
This makes me
So she's nervous because she didn't pre-study.
No.
Which is okay
Yeah.
because again, this is a Rorschach test just with words and not pictures. So
Okay.
it'll be fine. What's your favorite word?
Oh my gosh. Love.
What is your least favorite word?
Hey.
What area of your work do you find most interesting?
The challenge.
What area of your work that's the most challenging for you?
The paperwork.
What sound or noise do you love?
The ocean.
What sound or noise do you hate?
My husband chewing on ice. He's going to die. My husband chewing on ice.
Love it.
Yep.
That's probably something that you and my wife share because I am the subject of that type of thing as well, quite a bit. We actually just shared a laugh about that yesterday, my wife and I. So, what's your favorite curse word?
Rhymes with duck.
Love it. What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
I want to have a whole bunch of Airbnbs. We have one, and I love being in hospitality. So I just want to own a bunch of Airbnbs and be the hostess with the mostest.
Sounds like a retirement plan.
Yeah.
What profession would you not like to do?
Pumping septic tanks.
I understand.
Yep.
And finally, if heaven exists, what would you like to hear your God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Good job.
Love it. Thank you for coming on today. I appreciate it.
Thank you for the opportunity. This has been great.
All right, gang. In this episode, we covered quite a bit. We covered Jessica's story, a little bit of a different view, a different path into cybersecurity. We talked about how, obviously, professionalizing the role, what does that mean to you? We also talked about what the challenge is around compliance, government regulation, how do we balance that? And then she gave solid advice for some folks that are either in or looking to get into cybersecurity and maybe not on that normal path. And I think that's been I think it'd be great takeaways for folks. So I truly appreciate that.
Well, thank you.
And finally, colleagues and friends, I renew the call. We must professionalize the role of the CISO. In the meantime, I wish you health, happiness, and success on your journey in becoming the professional CISO. Let's do this.
We're professionalizing the CISO role, so please subscribe to the Professional CISO Podcast.